Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic. My name is Shane. To my left is
Andrew.
Excellent, and we're a couple of guys who like to talk about D&D. We've been playing for a long time. We started back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, before a lot of people around here watching this were actually born. But that's okay, because I'm glad you came to the game your own way. But on this podcast, we'll talk about stuff about how to improve it and all that kind of junk. But you know what? What is important about today is the Kickstarter for Monsters of Feyland 2 has dropped. And you said, Andrew, 10 hours ago, roughly?
Yeah, we just started 10 hours ago and we're almost a third of the way there, which is pretty amazing.
I'm actually kind of surprised because I had the window open a few hours ago and I was looking at what the amount was and I did
Yeah,
my pledge and then I came up and it was kind of funny. I reloaded the page and it went from the previous, like, I don't know, it was about 3 or 4,000 to
mhm,
brrr, it actually counted up all the way to what the latest one at that point was about 9,400.
right.
But now you've broken in 10 hours, that's like $1,000 an hour.
Yeah,
So
pretty
that's totally well
incredible.
done. So this book is, of course, a follow-up to the original, which I will just hide this window for a sec. The original to Monsters of Feyland, which
Okay.
came out 3 years
3 years
ago,
ago, yeah,
about.
almost. Yeah.
And if
Four
you
four years
haven't
ago
picked up
now.
this one, has it been that long? We're old. We're
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
But what you guys don't actually know about this book is that it's very cool, and if you don't have it, I pity you, and therefore, you can fund the Monsters of Feyland 2 Kickstarter and get one of these as well. If you hit those higher tiers, however the Kickstarter people talk about them.
Yes.
So, my first question is why a sequel for this book? Because in between, you've had two completely different books that have had different focuses. Why did you return to
Yeah.
Phelan?
Yeah, actually three books in between with other settings. So this is the Monsters series, and each book
Oh,
we
right.
give you about 100 creatures. And as we started, they were really A to Z monster books with some lore. But now the last few have been more like campaign books, and that's what we want to do again. So yeah, we felt
Nice.
we really covered, we covered the city, the wilderness, we covered the underworld or the underdark. And then Feyland, really, this is our first love, like these sort of creatures, and it works so well with Travis Hansen's art. And
Yeah,
there were
that's
a lot
true.
of things that were left over from the first book. There were a lot of creatures that didn't make it into the book. And there were things that we started to do or we hinted at in terms of what Feyland is like. And now we really want to really flesh that out. And we're going to give you a map. The map should be done in the next couple of days, and that'll be posted on the Kickstarter
Nice.
page. So you'll see what all of Feyland looks like. And actually, one of the stretch goals is to get a map of each of the regions as well to give you more detail. So basically, a lot more detail, a chance to bring back some of the favorites, some monsters that people really loved, and bring them back in even more powerful, strange forms. Um, yeah, so it was a natural fit. We really felt like we weren't finished with Phelan, and as we say, this one is going to be a lot stranger.
Well, I have to say that in these books here, I'm gesturing to my right, which has Monsters of the Wilderness and Monsters of the City and Monsters of the Underworld. A lot of these, I mean, they're creative, they're very specific, but you're right.
Mhm.
Phelan, as you put it, is so weird and can be so weird. And I don't think, at least from my experience, uh, people don't take advantage of that in gameplay, or DMs don't take advantage of that a lot of the time because they try to be organic and things like that, stuff that I like. But, there's time where you can just roll a dice and be like, okay, you're being attacked by let me just check my book here, a goblin who has wings. So congratulations, 350 of those are now descending upon your location.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And that's the other thing. Like every time we've made a choice about, okay, what book we're going to do next, it's really about, in many ways, how can we be the most creative? And And at this point, we felt like, we really weren't finished with Feyland, and there's really no rules. Like, it's an alternative reality where almost anything is possible. So the potential for the types of creatures, for the shapes and the colors is just really endless. And yeah, and like one example again to talk about what Feyland is, or the Feywild. The opening part of the first book, we wrote, Feyland is a magical land just around the corner from the everyday world. You might simply step into it without even knowing. Beauty is everywhere, emotions are volatile, and time doesn't seem to work in a linear fashion. In some places, twilight never seems to end, and thick mists drift through endless woods. In other areas, there's constant upheaval, and music blares out spontaneously. Bright colors sparkle, and the world is bursting with life. And we talk about how the Fae are, in general, these quick, agile, chaotic beings, and they are playful, usually enthusiastic, sometimes savage. And even the beasts talk, and a giant mushroom might ask you to dance. So
Nice.
endless possibilities of inspiration and ideas. And it doesn't even have to be in a Feyland campaign. You can put these creatures into other stories.
That is true. I mean, because that way, because I know that when we played, that there have been creatures that I know are from the Feyland book that appear in places that Feyland is nowhere near. Oh,
Yeah.
that actually rhymed, sort of. But anyway, but yeah, and you can actually play with those sorts of things because there's really no need in gameplay to really justify why a creature is there, especially when it's from a completely different dimension. Like there's all kinds of science fiction out there and fantasy out there where things just fall through cracks of reality, and it's like, oh, you've run into a creature that has some helpful information. He or she says something that moves the party along,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely these creatures could be utilized for that sort of thing when a DM kind of you know, guys, okay, anytime now you could get to the castle because it's right
Mm-hmm.
there, but you guys are, trying to decide on what kind of apples you're going to buy at the local market. Then you could actually have like a mystical dragon of some sort just sort of pop out of nowhere and be like, hey guys, TikTok, by the way, I'm going to set this village on fire if you don't leave. I mean, you don't necessarily want to railroad players, but at the same time, these creatures give you kind of that flexibility.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question about the some of your favorites from the first book. Um, the one that I really like and that we've run into in gameplay before is the Frog Witch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why have you gone? Because I know that on at least two occasions we've had that particular creature come out.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it your go to, or is it a go to? Maybe it's just a convenient one.
Oh, well, she's an interesting story because she was one of the first creatures I created when I started DMing and coming back to D&D. And originally, actually, my first version of her is actually a sort of more chaotic neutral version. But I thought
Right.
it would give some more bite if she was chaotic evil when I wrote the first Feyland book. And she was one of about, I'd say, 10 of the 100 monsters in the book that I thought, I don't know if I should put it in here. This is a bit over the top. Um, I don't know. It's a bit spicy, and what turned out to happen was every one of those creatures that I doubted whether I should put them in the book were the favorites, and a lot of people were really drawn to her, and yeah, she was a huge hit with the first book, and I think she's a really interesting character. Um, she's got so many different sides to her. She sort of looks like she doesn't look too hard. She looks pretty harmless actually, um, but has this relationship with the swamp and all these frogs and giant frogs, and is a very powerful spellcaster. So what we've done in the new book, we talked before about how she really controlled part of the swamp in Feyland. Now the new book, she's decided, you know what? I want to take over all of Feyland, and she's kind of ignoring the two main Fey courts, and deciding that, you know what, I think I can just take this all for myself. And so she's much more powerful in the new book and has many more minions. And yeah, she's gone from about a challenge rating 13, 14, which is pretty tough. And now she's challenge rating 17 with extensive magic.
There is that is definitely because I remember that creature from playing, and I don't know why. It was just the way you played it, what it
Right.
was able to do, and that sort of thing, and how it played into the story. But I have to say, my favorite creature is right here. I don't know if my computer will let you see it, but yeah, it's gonna beam out. But essentially, right up here is, oh good lord, is the Doubt Trout. That is my favorite creature, and out of the entire book, because when you first look at the Doubt Trout, you're like, ah, oh, Doubt Trout, whatever, it's just a
Yeah.
fish, whatever. But you played it one time because I think we'd run into it a few times, but the one that really struck me as important is there he is. There's the Doubt Trout. You, but the creature was actually placed at a time where the party was in trouble. I think one or two people were down, and you had already preset that if they went near something, I think it was I think we were near a river at that point,
Yeah.
and the creature just kind of popped out of the water, kind of wink, and then the character, me, had to like pause basically for I think 2 turns. I think at that point, because I completely just was mesmerized by this trout and just full of doubt and not sure what to do, and which is kind of normal for me. But anyway, but yeah, the that really set the tone for such a simple. You look at it as a simplistic creature,
Hmm.
but when it's actually in the environment and it pops out of the water, it's like you were like he's got near the water. Oh yeah. So anyway, you hear something could jump out of the water, and you just turn to look, and bing, and sure enough, yeah, I think that was one of the moments where you thought that half the party was gonna die. But yeah, so I mean, I love the book. I love this book. And by the way, if you are going to jump into the Kickstarter, you can, of course, at the higher tiers, get the hardcover versions of these as well. I believe is that correct?
That's true, or the PDFs. And the first tier, or the second tier, actually, the um, fairy tier that gives the PDF of the new Monsters of Feyland 2 book, you also get the original Feyland PDF free as part of that. So
Nice.
yeah, it's available for both. And you're right about that creature. It's either something where it's a low level party, and this sort of creature is going to give them huge challenges, or
Oh
it's
yeah.
a medium or high level party that's, like you say, is busy doing something else, or or they're banged up from another fight or encounter of some kind, and then you introduce this other creature which doesn't seem too dangerous, but they can actually make a major impact.
Now I have to ask the question: out of all of the creatures from the first book, what is
Mhm.
your favorite?
Oh, that's
Now,
easy.
actually, favorite to play and favorite to create, maybe. So maybe I'll make it 2 questions.
Sure. Well, my favorite creature, just because of what it stands for, is the royal stag.
Nice.
And the art that Travis did, Travis Hansen, who's done all the art for all the books. I just think it is an incredible picture, and it stands for, it's part of the good Seelie court. It stands for honor and courage and bravery. It's just such a great symbol. I know quite a few people actually that's their favorite as well. As far as playing, I do love the Frog Witch because she's such a character. I play her as this kind of grumpy, surly character, and she doesn't really care what anybody else thinks, so that's always fun. Um, and there's some really powerful creatures too, like the Storm Dragon is
Oh
uh,
yeah.
is a handful. It can control the weather. It has some magic. Yeah, it's a piece of work for sure. there's lots in there that I really like, but my favorite as far as the combination of the creature and the art is definitely the royal stag. Yeah. And
Well, yeah,
I can just quickly let you know too, the creatures that will likely be in the new book in new forms. Um, for sure, the Frog Witch is returning, and that art is already on the Kickstarter page. The Hatter is returning, and that art is on the
nice.
page already. The Doubt Trout will return in a different sort of form.
Excellent.
We have a couple of teenage rebels, one for the evil court, one for the good court, and they will both return. So there's a number of creatures that will make an appearance, not too many. Most of the creatures will be brand new. People haven't seen them before, but we thought we'd take some of those favorites, twist them around, and bring them back in new forms.
And that's actually kind of important because having the same creature over and over again can get kind of tiring, I think, anyway. But as the monster manuals that have come out, and now I'm going back to the original monster manual, then
Mhm.
Fiend Folio, and then moving on forward. That even though you have these creatures that might be considered repeats, the variants I think are important because it kind of helps you get the creative juices flowing for if you're somebody who really likes going to a type of creature, or you're in a particular region that has a bulk of those kinds of creatures around, throwing in a few, I don't know, spices is kind of a good idea, and I like that. I think it's really great. And that's actually something else to bring up is you've mentioned the art. Now, do you want to tell people who Travis is a little bit, just to say how did you get him involved?
Sure. So I was a fan of his art for a few years um, before we started working together, and eventually contacted him about doing art for one of our original books before the Monster series started. And we hit it off right away, just happened to be around the same age and we both want to kind of present the same sort of artwork too. To us, it's important that there actually has some meaning to it. And we don't lean towards the kind of horror side of things either. We also like
Right.
having a lot of fun with the game because it's a game. And
I've heard that before somewhere.
yeah, so he right away we really connected. He's a longtime comic artist. He's got his Life of the Party comic, which is on online every single day, and his Bean comic as well. He now has some books you can get at a big multinational company that starts with the letter A. They send things to your house in boxes. So he's got some books there as well. And yeah, and then his art really meshed with the kind of the sort of the type of creatures that we wanted, which were whimsical. And so I give him descriptions of the creatures, but I also want him to run with it and really do what he does. So it's really a combination of my design and some of my description, and then Travis Hansen's magic of what he does.
All the artwork I like just because it's my jam. Um, I also like Elmore's sort of style and those kinds of things. But the one thing I really like about Travis is that he has the comic timing, I think, is one way to put
Mhm.
it for artwork.
Mhm.
And there is a creature, I don't remember which book it's in. It might be the first Feyland book, but it could be another. But is the log that has the little face on it,
Right? Yeah.
and it's a log that's sort of inviting. Actually, come to think of it, I think we ran into this thing once. But
We did.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
we it's just the way that the artwork is done. It's just this. It looks like a log. It's got this. Yeah, there it is. Just that little tiny face in there, being like, "Come on, come on, it'll be fine." And
Yeah.
I just think that's so cool because it's so subtle that it's not like a lot of the sort of the mainstream D&D things have a lot of action in them. They've got a lot of
Mhm.
that sort of things are exploding every once in a while. But that particular image just I chuckled at it because I just like it so much because it's just a simple thing and it's gonna kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is quite a bit of humor in the books, and actually in the series, we've put more and more in there. This book again, to give some more details, it should be about the same size as the last one. So with stretch goals, we could get up to 120, maybe a bit more in terms of the number of monsters. Probably will be around 150 or 140 to 160 pages. And it'll mostly be Fey creatures. It won't be entirely Fey. There'll be other creatures that are in Feyland as well. So there'll be undead and monstrosities and some, beasts, and there'll be a few other versions of creatures. We're also going to add in a whole bunch of magic items like we did with the last book throughout the book. We're also going to put in a bunch of different kind of Fey flora and fungi like we did with the first Feyland. There's going to be adventure tables for events tables and advice for game masters of how you might want to run Feyland. And actually, one of the stretch goals this time is creating a bunch of tables that the game master could use to deal with bargains between Fey creatures and the players, which I think is could be really, really interesting. And
oh, that's cool.
yeah,
because there's definitely some creatures that won't. I mean, they have their own agendas, especially in Feyland, and you're going to Oh, that's cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so there's some of the tables would be curses and negative things that the Fae could do to you, or positive things, or consequences of making deals with them, or give examples of what the deal might be. Like maybe your first child has to be named after them, and then usually their deals have hidden clauses or little extras that are thrown in there as well.
I gotta say that in terms of well chosen word, when you have a terms of service that you check a little box and don't actually read, that is very much like a Fey kind of deal. Like, oh yeah, just sign here. Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, we're gonna totally get what you want, and here you go. Just put your John Henry right here, and then oh yeah, okay. Oh no, you don't need to read the rest of it. It's fine. No, it's all good.
Yeah.
And then it's like we've conquered the whatever, and now I have to do what?
Yeah. Or what about reverse billing? Right, that's a total Fey deal. Right, you signed this, you had this contract, and then they're like, oh, by the way, this continues forever unless you get a hold of us and you cancel it.
A 3 billion year contract.
Right, which is what here in Canada we had for cell phones until the government got involved finally. I think remember that? I think all the cell phone contracts were like they just went forever, and then but you have to contact them,
and they would do nothing about it. They would not help at all. They still don't. No. But yeah, I mean that's totally comparing cell phone companies in Canada to monsters in Feyland.
Well, that's
Travis, we have a new piece of art you need to make. It's a political cartoon, however.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so awesome.
Well, that's how it is. That's again, like I always talk about archetypes. That's why, because they're real. They're, you think a Fey creature might be this thing in a fantasy world, but actually it could be your neighbor.
True. That is so true.
Or maybe it's your dungeon master.
That's true. I mean, no one ever suspects the dungeon master because they're supposed to be godlike and fair.
Yes, but... Halo.
Let's see. Are there any other creatures that I want to mention in here? Let me think. There is so much going on in the first book. So much going on in subsequent books. Hint.
Well, and we also mentioned a lot of locations in that first book, but we never give that many details, and you never have a map to see where everything is. So in this new book, we can finally do that. We can show you where all the locations from the first book and the second book are. We can even give you details of the different buildings and settlements, and actually we're going to give you a detailed rundown of what creatures are on either side of this big war between the SEELIE court and the UNSEELIE court. And
yes,
the big part, the real core story, if you want to use that story for the new book, is that there's a well a very powerful well in Feyland, and it has been corrupted by this individual, an evil fae from the UNSEELIE court, who will meet in a art form shortly. His name is Thelonious Punk. And Thelonious
That
has
deserves a virtual fist bump.
Thelonious has corrupted this well, and now because of this, these creatures from the first book are coming back in stranger forms, and also this war has broken out. There's always been conflict between these two courts, and now it's broken out in, it's on, and we'll give you details of exactly who's on either side. So this book could be a fairy tale type resource for you, or you can have this epic war as well.
That is kind of cool. I gotta say, I mean, it sort of reminds me a little bit of Sins and Virtues, and where you had, well, they were thematic, and that's kind of what I like about a lot of books, but especially yours, is you have started as creating a certain type, and you've moved into like, there's actually more life to these things if you actually give them reason to be, and I love it. It's great. And Travis, thank you for making them look great. But what else can you really say other than it's a resource that DMs can use in multiple ways? It's not just going, all right, I gotta go find a stat block. Hang on, you're running into a ruined tree. Just 1 second. Okay, so the ruined tree looks like this, everybody, and it's got these. So now you have to kill it. Instead, you actually have some hints as to why this tree is doing what it's doing. Does that make sense? That's just how I think about it. But
yeah, and like we've talked about before, most of these creatures, when we try as much as possible to make these monsters into characters, and
exactly.
so that's what we've tried to do. And just talking about the overall Kickstarter again, if people don't want to back at a higher level, the one option at the very beginning is to just back for $1. Then you're part of the Kickstarter. That way, in the backer kit, which is all the add-ons that you can add later on in the Kickstarter once we fund, you can do that. So that's one option. Then the first tier after that is the fairy one that gives you the PDF of the new book and the old Feyland book. Then we have an option for a soft cover of the new book and PDF. The next tier is a hardcover and a PDF of the new book. After that, you have the digital version, the Hatter tier. So that gives you PDFs of all the books, including the new one. So all 5 Monster Series books in digital form if you don't want to use real books. The next tier, the Satyr, is for it's a limited edition. So there's been challenges over the last few years with getting the really best quality paper and color. So this is what this is for, to make sure that you get a very special version.
See the one I chose? See the one I chose? See the one I chose?
Then we have a few tiers, the Dryad, Sprite, Oberon, and Titania. And those are tiers where you can choose the new book in hardcover form and PDF. And then you can add on one or more of the series. And then the very last tier, the Elder Tree, you get all the hardcover books in the series. You get some custom-made products like dice, stickers, character page like these monster pages for yourself, for a character of yours, with art by Travis. You also get a chance for myself to run an online game for you, and a bunch of other books that we've published as well. It's a big package, that final tier. And we also list on the Kickstarter page the add-ons, and we'll have more as well when the backer kit opens. So all the hardcover books, all the PDFs, our other books in PDF form. We'll have stickers of the creatures, T-shirts with the creatures' images on them, and it'll be quite extensive. As far as stretch goals, as we move down there, the first one, if we get past being funded, would be to add 20 extra monsters. And the stretch goals, the numbers on the left are in Canadian dollars, like the ones that we have up here. And then on the right, we mentioned what the American amounts will be. The second stretch goal is to get a regional map for each area of Feyland. So that would give you a total of 8 maps in the book. And then the next stretch goal are the Fey bargain tables we talked about, which would include some art as well by Travis. And then the final one we have so far are 2 more subclasses for player characters. Right now, I'm leaning towards one of them being a wizard. And then there's also an adventure that we could put together with creatures from the book. The other thing I should point out, which is very important, is that there's a free download on the page. If you just scroll up slightly here. Thanks, Shane. So if you just go up to right here. So it says download the preview. And right here, we've already finished a section of the book, one of the regions of Feyland. So if you click on that, there's a free downloadable booklet of basically one chapter of the book complete for you.
That is, I was going to show it, but I kind of think it should be a surprise.
Yeah.
Because I was actually looking at this morning, and it was, yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah, so you can see some of the creatures if you just don't mind just scrolling up slightly here. So we put a few of the, so there's one of the Fey Arc Fays. So here's Duke Cloudmuddle. And he is an interesting character because he's one of them that's not evil, but he's just realized that his wife is. And she's had, yeah, you see he's using a phooka there, smoking from a phooka, and his wife has actually tampered with it and had him under a spell. And he's just come out of the spell to realize what's been going on. So this is his story. So he's quite a character. And then above him,
I just noticed this, the smoke ring, different thing. Ooh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And above him is the new version of the Hatter that we spoke about.
Look at that. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I just love his style. Like it's different and unique. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Gotta love it.
Yeah. And if you pan up just a little bit more, maybe we can show at least one more. Oh, there's the sugar.
Oh yeah. You mentioned this, I think, last week or the week before, and I was like, the sugar dragon. That sounds so cool, and I hadn't seen this yet. So
it's sort of like a giant version of a fairy dragon with a few other extras thrown in, and a very interesting character who usually has layers behind waterfalls, so you can see him emerging out of one there. And then if we maybe just pan up, I think there's one more for sure just above there. Yeah, so here's
the flying centaur.
The flying centaur, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then if you look in the booklet, the free booklet on the Kickstarter page, that's filled with a number of creatures in one area of Feyland, and all the pages are finished.
It does look gorgeous. It does look gorgeous.
Yeah.
Do you have any other tidbits that people should know about, or are you keeping some of those under your hat?
Well, we will release more art over the period of the Kickstarter here over the next, it's about 28 days. So we'll release more creatures that we're going to show. We'll release the map in a day or two. Hopefully it'll be ready. And yeah, we'll have reviews that people do on the Kickstarter. We'll post. I will be going on the Nerdarchy show on the 27th of this month to talk to
very cool.
To talk to Dave about the project. And we'll keep having updates on Twitter, here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on our website. So we'll tell the story of what's happened to this well, who corrupted it, who's trying to save the well, who's on the forces of good and the forces of evil, basically. And then there's some Fae who are termed wild Fae, who really, they have no interest in what's going on with this war as well.
I just picture oh, help me, I'm about to be killed. And this does not impact me at all.
Yeah.
I have a well to get to. Bye.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah. And we also have video reviews of the other books on the Kickstarter page as well, if people want to peruse those and take a look at the books. And they're very detailed, so you get to see exactly what the other books are like. And yeah, it's pretty exciting. The whole team is together. So Travis is doing all the art. Gordon McAlpin is doing the graphic design, the layout, art direction. He made the video for the promo part of the Kickstarter. And then we have Sarah Bagshaw, who's in our D&D group. She's doing the some of the editing assistance. And
Nice.
yeah, of course, my daughter, who these books are too heavy for her now, apparently, but maybe she can help out.
Yeah, just to give those context, the Andrew was telling me a week or so ago about the the books had come in. They were being all looking great and being mailed out and stuff, and his worker was very tired. I'm very tired, Dad. I
Yes,
can't possibly lift any more of these books. I would like to
yes,
go play now.
yeah. Back to the Lego.
Back to the
Yes,
Lego.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to play the trailer, and I apologize for those listening on the podcast. But you, of course, can go to the Kickstarter page or head on over to the World of Mirror to find it from there, or the YouTube channel to view what we're going to play. So hang on one sec.
Yeah.
Let's play the trailer just because I think it's worth it. And if you haven't wanted to get your copy already by now, I don't know what to tell you. We're here to talk about good creative art that needs to be brought to life and help do it, make it happen. The books are great, and hey, the more you buy, the more you donate, the more books you get. Because I'm glad I got these. I think they're great books, and I think that they need to be shared. I think is that a good way to put it?
Yes, and we'll have all the links below as well. And like I said, we're pretty active on social media. You can, if you have questions, you can ask them there as well. And yeah, and our email is there as well as on the Kickstarter page. You can send messages. So far, as I said, we're about a third of the way. Let me just double check. So we have about 160 backers so far. And yeah,
166 now.
that's right.
The number it
160.
climbs.
Yes.
And I have to say a shout out to those 166 backers because, like, 10 hours worth. I mean, wow, that's actually kind of that is not surprising, but kind of awesome in that really that's so great kind of way.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a small group of people relatively in the big scheme of things who've really helped make these books. Like without them, we wouldn't have got this series made, and we want to make sure we make another great book for them. And I should mention, we did just make another book, Monsters of the Wilderness, which was delayed a bit last year, and the shipping phase is almost done. So we have one shipment going out on Thursday, and then probably just one more next week, and that'll be it. So about, I'd say 85% or so of the books have already been sent or are on their way and should arrive any day. And then there's a few more to go. And of course, some countries a little bit further away, like Australia, New Zealand, and Norway. Those ones might take a little bit longer. But yeah, it's actually, I was telling my wife today, it feels really great to be doing this Kickstarter and having these tangible books around the house. It makes it
Yeah.
makes it very rewarding. And we have tons of these because a number of people from the last Kickstarter bought the whole series. So we had to have reprints of all of those books. So the whole series has been littered around our house for a few weeks here, and it's pretty cool to now be pretty cool to be starting to make another one.
Well, hey, you are now at 5 books, so do I hear box set?
Yeah.
Might be an idea. I kind of like that idea because, I mean, that's sort of what I experienced with the 2 Kickstarters ago. I was a little behind. I'm like, I gotta have all the hardcovers because I gotta say that the hardcover books, not just of these, but of like a lot of books in general, they just have that tangible feel that really bring. I mean, with the exception of maybe the original D&D back in the day, first
Mhm.
edition, those were all paperback. At least I never saw any hardcovers. But just that's sort of how they get created now, and I love it when uh, we just I'm now gonna go and do something cool with the gameplay, or I'm just gonna read and yeah, I love the feel of these. So am I laying it on a little too thick? Get all the hardcovers. But thank you for listening, watching. Definitely everything that we've talked about will be linked down in the doobly doo down below. You'll be able to find the Kickstarter. You'll be able to find all the social media stuff. I just retweeted on my account the fact that it's now 167 backers. Darn, I'm behind.
Wow.
But yeah, but seriously, these books are really great, and I have fought things in them. I have taken these books to bed to read, like I do with a lot of books. But every so often, it's like I'm not going to read that novel. I'm going to now pick up this D&D manual and I'm going to go through it. But yeah, I totally hope you guys support Cawood Publishing, because if you don't, Cawood Publishing will come looking for you. Be careful, everybody. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. Thanks, Shane. And yeah, we'll well, I'll consider that. Yeah, thank you. And we will have Kickstarter updates here and there. And then our next show, we'll get back to some general discussions of D&D, and we'll be looking at wizards.
yes, the least played uh, character class that I've ever done. Like I just don't know why. I don't know why.
Wow.
So I hope you convince me that I'm wrong in my ways.
Yeah, I love
Thank
wizards.
you,
So yeah.
everyone. Well, I know. I mean, what's the guy? Hey, just before we close, I just have to point
Yes,
it out
yes,
that like here he is, like this guy here, this guy right here. What kind of a character is he? You know, wizards are important.
yes.
We're finally ending, people. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you again,
Later.
Andrew.